Hello and welcome to the Bikes or Death podcast. My name is Patrick and I'm your host. And this is a show that talks about bikepacking, adventuring, and the cool people who participate. And welcome back, friends. It's been about a month since I posted an episode. I apologize for the hiatus, but I promise I'm going to make it up to you. I recently got back from the bikepacking summit at Mulberry Gap in Lij, Georgia. And yeah, that is how you say it. At first, I thought it was Elijah, but I was informed it's Lij, something like that. Regardless of how you say it, it was a a really amazing venue in the middle of a national forest, and gathered there was about 70 of the most incredible humans, everyone from the fantastic presenters down to all the people that were just participating and there to just sharing the stoke. Genuinely, I am walking away on such a high from that event. There was inspiration and information on tap at a level that I didn't even know was out there. I mean, some of these, really all the presenters, I mean, I'm not going to pick one or two because they were all fantastic. It really encouraged me to be a better version of myself. You know, it let me know that there's just different levels out there, you know, and as we go through this life and we continue to progress, it encourages me to know that there's people out there that are championing a way forward that is something that I believe in, that I hold to, and I want to promulgate that and put that back out in the universe. So I hope that I can do that. I hope that I can share some of that excitement and that stoke and that knowledge and inspiration with you. And those episodes, I recorded 7 total. Those are going to start dropping next week, every single week. And I think that you're going to like them. Really good stuff. This episode is going to be a little bit different than the ones I've done in the past. This is a trip report from a recent bikepacking trip that my wife and I took in her home state of West Virginia. And it really was a fantastic trip. It didn't all go perfect. We had our challenges, but that didn't diminish from our experience. It was truly a beautiful, challenging, and a wonderful thing that I'm glad that we were able to do together. And we got a whole show to listen to that, so I won't bore you with the details right now. The only thing I'm going to ask right now is that if you are getting value out of the show, do me a favor and head over to iTunes and leave a review. It's very helpful to help grow the show and gain exposure for other people. Share it with your friends. If you're really interested in supporting the show, stick around after the show. I will tell you all the ways that you can support the show if you're getting something out of it and you just want to give a little bit back. But I'm not going to bore you with the details right now, because right now it's time for the show. So let's get to it.
I came in the door, I said it before. I never let the mic magnetize me no more. But it's biting me, inviting me to rhyme. I can't hold it back. I'm looking for the line, taking off.
Welcome to the Bikes or Death podcasting studio. Sometimes we use it as your kitchen. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here in my own home, drinking wine.
I know.
In my jammies. My pajama jams.
Yeah. You just, she just finished a soccer match. Is that what it's called? A game or a match? What do y'all call soccer?
Football match.
A football match. Yeah. And anyway, and I wrangled her into a podcast real quick because I'm leaving for Georgia for the bikepacking summit on Tuesday. And if we don't do it now, we're basically never going to do it. So instead of sleeping, you've agreed to sit down with me and have a podcast. So just for anyone who doesn't know, Keri and I recently went on a bikepacking trip to West Virginia. And this is going to be basically our trip report of what went down. We got a bunch of questions from listeners on Instagram and whatnot. And so we're going to be answering those after our little trip report. So Keri, why don't you start us off? Why is West Virginia important to you? What's so special about this trip?
It's my home state. It's where I grew up. Very humble beginnings. and I was really happy to go back there.
Yeah. No, I mean, you were pretty stoked to
I was
go.
very much stoked.
Yeah.
The fall is my favorite time of year too. So I had gotten my best friend from high school, Rachel Kalenko, was getting married. And so I was in the wedding, and we decided to make a week of it because it's a very long drive from Texas. So we thought, we're going to go that far, we might as well do a little gander.
Oh, which is kind of our style. Like, we never go anywhere and don't include some kind of mountain biking, cycling, bike packing.
Yeah, we tend to take the long way there.
Yeah, which is the way it should be. I mean, if you're going to a new area, you should try to find a route and go check it out, you know? But I think, yeah, so you were like super stoked. I think part of it was, actually, I know part of it was you introducing me to your state.
Yeah.
Because I've been to West Virginia several times, and it's always been in the winter. It's not that great in the winter. And every single time we go, you're like,
we should be here in the summer.
we should be here
or
in the
fall,
summer. Yeah.
or in the spring. Anytime but now.
Anytime but now. And
yeah, we always go home to visit family in the holiday season.
yeah.
So
Yeah, which makes sense. So this was like
Yeah.
our first time to go to West Virginia when the weather was good and we were going to do some bike packing.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I've always wanted to see this part of the state too. Cause like
Really?
I grew up in Morgantown, which was in the northern part of West Virginia. And I spent a lot of time camping when I was growing up with my dad, and we went to some of these places. I remember going to Seneca Rocks with my grandmother when I was a young girl.
Roberta?
Yes.
I love Roberta.
I know. She's so special. I love her too. Anyways, yeah, so I really wanted to see this in a new light, in an extra, oh God, what is the right word? Just in a light that I hadn't seen because I was a kid when I went to these places, you know? And it's different, like just going to Seneca Rocks or something like that, or Spruce Knob, and like you walk down like a little paved path, like a quarter mile, and you get to the overlook, which is like wooden planks, and there's a bunch of people there, and you're like, oh, I was there, but did you really experience it, you know? And so I was really excited to go back and actually like do a true adventure in these areas.
Well, I mean, to your grandmother's credit or your family's credit, the fact that they took you on this type of stuff and introduced you to this is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
And of course,
So
West
lucky.
Virginia is littered with public lands. I mean, we're not that fortunate in Texas. So, like, I mean, it's not hard to find some really beautiful and remote places to go to.
Yeah, it was really hard to pick a place actually because
Oh, that's true.
the
Yeah.
Monongahela National Forest runs almost the length of the entire state.
And then you mentioned Dolly Sod.
Yeah, that's just one area in the national forest. So
Okay.
it's split up into so many different parts. I mean, it's really just endless. And so one of the things I had trouble doing was figuring out where I wanted to take you because there were so many special spots that I was like, oh, I wish I could just connect these, and maybe if we could just ride 300 more miles, we could go here too, you know, and a month later we're still in West Virginia.
Yeah.
So.
No, you did. You wanted to spend, which is fine. I mean, if it wasn't for jobs and kids and debt and money and all that stuff, yeah, we'll definitely spend a month in West Virginia. But
Yeah,
unfortunately, we had a wedding to get to
which
that
we
you were
barely made.
in. So,
Sorry, Rachel.
oh, she was fine. It's typical Keri fashion. This was expected. This was the way the universe intended this to happen. So we did things a little bit different this time. Typically, I'm the one that creates the routes and all that jazz. I enjoy it. It's something I really enjoy doing, but it made perfect sense that Keri is the one who creates this route. She knows the state. She knows what's awesome. So this was your first time to really plan one of the routes that we went on a bikepacking adventure. So tell us about the route.
It was 2 days. We had one overnight stay, and the first day was 85 miles and about 3,000 feet of climbing. We spent most of the day on rail to trail systems, the Greenbrier Trail and the West Fork, which is also runs along the Greenbrier River. And mostly it's pretty flat for that first section along those two routes.
Yeah.
They weren't actually connected all the way through, so we had to jump on some back mountain roads to connect the two together. And so it was a little bit of pavement. And then we hopped back on the river trail. And then once we got almost to the end of the road there, we started traveling east. So we were traveling south to north, and we started traveling east. And we got on some forest roads, which were super fun. And then we spent the first night camping in the national forest. Our goal was to make it to Spruce Knob Lake Campground, and we had a backup, which was about 12 miles sooner.
Yeah. What was the what was that second campground? The backup?
It was I believe it's Laurel Fork. Yeah, Laurel Fork Campground.
Okay.
And then day 2 was we got back on to some forest roads for a while, did some climbing, and we headed up towards the top of Spruce Knob, which is the highest point in West Virginia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I forgot that. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah. And then so when we got to the top of that, nowhere to go but down, right?
Yeah.
So we got to go bomb this really fun downhill for like 10 to 12 miles, and it was really fun. We went back down in the river valley and then stop at breakfast and then do a really epic climb, which is, so day 2 is about 50 miles that we planned and about 5,000 feet of climbing. And most of that climbing came in that first section to climb up Spruce Knob. And then we came down and then we went right back up. So we did like a 6-mile climb, 1,600 feet of climbing in 6 miles. And that was going to be hard. I knew that was going to be hard ahead of time. But it was like a challenge that I had thrown in there that I felt like was totally worthy for the views when we got up top.
Yeah. There's a payoff.
Yes. And then the other payoff was that we got to jump on an epic trail right after that. So we got to throw in some single track and kind of ride along this ridge line with really amazing views almost the entire length of this trail. So to end all things, we would climb back down into Seneca Rocks and back into the warmth and comfort of food and booze and beds and all of that jazz.
Beer and food and quote unquote civilization,
Yes.
or as good as you can
Civilized
come
society.
to civilization in West Virginia.
Excuse you, we are highly civilized, sir.
Rural West Virginia.
Rural.
Civilization is a different definition there. I'm just gonna tell you.
Yeah, and the way I planned the route was that as soon as you got bored with something, we were on something else. So it was really fun, kind of planning a route that had all those things combined together. The rail trail system, the forest roads, single track, double track,
And backwoods or back roads in West Virginia.
backcountry paved roads.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
actually seeing how West Virginians live, you know? Yeah. Okay. So from my perspective, when you presented me with this route, because you just did your thing, you did your homework, and you were like, here's the route. I looked at it and I thought, awesome. Like, this looks really good. Day 1, 85 miles, mostly rails to trail, only like 3,000 something feet of climbing. And then day 2 was like 50 miles, so less mileage, but like 5,000 something feet of climbing. It has a mix of rails trails. It has single track. It has climbing. You know, it's a great. I was proud of you. I am still proud of you.
Thank you.
I thought it was a great route.
It was fun to plan. It
I
really
was super stoked. We were both like really stoked to go on this trip, I think.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
And the weather was awesome. The weather was like, I have to say this because when we left Texas, it was 190. No, 109. It was 109
He
degrees.
was living in a frying pan, ladies and gentlemen.
It was 109 degrees. Like, that's for real. 109 degrees. And we went to West Virginia where it was like high of 70 and lows in the 40s. Like, it was
We got super lucky because did you know, like, it went back up into the 90s up in West Virginia?
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
so often, like, it goes the other way, it seems like.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I thought was like neat for you and I was excited for you was just simply putting West Virginia on the map in terms of a bike packing route. So I guess we haven't mentioned that, but our kind of idea with this is when we started looking at routes for West Virginia, we couldn't find any. There wasn't any established routes that are like really well known. And so then the shift became okay, well, like, let's see if we can make a cool route and just put out some information, you know? And I think that was neat. I think that was neat for you being from West Virginia to be the first person to like put some information about bike packing and experiencing your state via bicycle. You know, when we went to like tag some posts on Instagram afterwards, no one had ever used the hashtag WV bike packing or West Virginia bike packing. Like you were the first person ever to use those hashtags. But do you know what percentage of West Virginia is public land?
If I were to guess, I would guess.
Guess I'm gonna Google it. You guess.
Oh man,
I'm gonna put you on the spot.
I bet it's like 70%. I bet it's some crazy high number.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised by. Let's see,
But yeah, when I typed in bike packing, I remember one of the articles that came up was an article from a bike shop in Canaan Valley, and it was
holy shit! Hold on. More than 92% of federal land, or 1.04 million acres, is owned by the U.S. Forest Service in West Virginia. 92%.
Wow, that's even higher than I thought. That's crazy. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you threw out a reasonable number of 70, which is like reasonable. No one would say 92%.
Yeah. So West Virginia is a interesting state in that we've been, I don't want to say pillaged. I mean, we benefited from it, but we have largely been profited upon from our resources, whether it be, you know, coal, oil, gas, lumber. So a lot of like the historical markers that we saw, you know, were revolving around the lumber companies and all of that. And so there's very little not native
like untouched
national forests. That's I can't think of the word, but there's very little forest that hasn't been logged over the years, you know? Which I think is pretty common everywhere. But I mean,
West Virginia's, we could get into all that, but it, regardless of that, it's a beautiful state and with a considerable amount of public land that we just learned that we didn't even realize.
Yeah. It's like one big playground.
I mean, it's enormous. It's like everywhere you go is public land. So,
so the article that popped up was Blackwater bikes, I believe, in Canaan Valley.
Right.
And it was like an overview, and it was awesome. Shout out to them. Like, thank you for at least having a website up.
Yeah, that's great. No, that's super great.
Great bike shop. But yeah, so they just had an overview of like the 3 different areas that you could kind of touch on.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, here's a route and here's all the details and here's where you can fill up and all that. So
right. So yeah, our goal with this is to put out a route. Now, the route that we wound up riding isn't exactly ready to put out there.
No.
But we're going to make some tweaks to it, and Keri's actually going to spearhead this thing. All right. So basically, for brevity's sake, no one wants to hear the minutia of every single minute of our ride, but day one was pretty much comprised of 4 different segments. We have the Greenbrier Trail. Then we had the Back Mountain Road?
Mm-hmm.
Back Mountain Road. Then we had the West Fork Trail. And then we had the forest roads headed into camp. So it's basically 4 different sections. So why don't we share some of our favorite moments or just whatever stood out about each phase? So
who gets to go first?
Okay. How about Keri? You go first on phase 1.
Okay. uh, my favorite on phase one was definitely seeing the bear run across the trail.
Shocker.
Yeah, shocker. I'm a little bit obsessed.
Within the first like 10 miles of the route.
Yeah, that was a hell of a way to start, right?
Well, I think it's worth mentioning on that like we started this route at 7:30 in the morning, and by 7:35 or 7:32, I don't even know, it was half a mile later, Keri got a flat, and it wasn't just like I don't know, it wasn't a nail, it wasn't like a spiky thing. She got a branch from a tree somehow.
It was a wood chip. That's how I describe it, like a chip.
I
It wasn't
don't know.
sharp. It was like
It was a
thick.
blunt. It was a
It was
blunt.
super blunt. I was like, how is this even possible? Like, how
Yeah.
could this pierce my tire?
And we started having flashbacks of the Womble where I got a slash in my sidewall tire half a mile in. I mean, it's the exact same thing, you know? And so we
So
started
brutal.
out the trip like, of course, we patched the tire and we kept on going. And then, yeah, within like the first 10 miles, we saw the bear.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know for you, but for me, that was like,
Oh, completely overshadowed it. I didn't even remember the flat when I was thinking of
yeah,
the bear.
it was
Yeah.
like, it was a good omen. It was like,
Also, I brought on the flat tire because was talking to my dad the day before about how I needed to learn more about my bike and learn
Yeah.
more about bike maintenance and how I needed to learn how to change a flat. And so there you go. I got my chance.
the universe doth provide. All right, is that your first segment? Okay. So, yeah, like the things that really, okay, there's a few things and I'm talkative. So, one was just like, I had never ridden rails to trails before. So, like, really just getting in a groove with that was pretty interesting. You know, like, we're going to be on this thing for like 85 miles or whatever, you know, like, so like just getting in a groove and like learning to appreciate it. And like at that point, you're not really struggling on a bike. So you're really able to focus on everything else that's around you. You know, you're really taking in the scenery and the river and the color of the trees and the chipmunks that are scurrying across the road and the wildlife. You know, I mean, so that was like one thing is like just getting in that groove because I'd never been there before and I really liked it. Which led to, you know, recently I've started meditating, which is like a new thing for me. But it's something I've been like practicing while I ride. And I'm very interested in like how your mind dictates everything. I mean, everything, period. Like,
What
so
a perfect place to practice meditation too.
oh, God. So I knew that like we were about 35 miles in on segment one, and I had this like lingering feeling of wanting to meditate while I was riding. So about 35 miles, I knew we had 5 miles left. We're kind of getting to the end of the first segment. I told you, I was like, I'm going to, you know, do my own thing. I'm going to meditate for like 10 minutes. I don't remember what I said, but, you know, I just want to take some time and like meditate and really like soak this in. And I think that was like one of the coolest things that I've done on a bike. Like, I really found this like rhythm and like balance and balance just where like I felt like everything was in balance. My breath and my energy and the environment and the weather, like everything was in balance. And I was just like a vessel floating through space and time, you know?
Well, you
And
have the floating water running next to you.
yeah.
And you have the falling leaves above your head.
Thank you. Yeah. Like that was the thing is like when I was doing this, we were like through a tunnel of trees and the leaves were just falling like raindrops. And I got really emotional, you know, at that point and
Yeah.
really just, I don't even know.
You were in it.
I was
as
just
they
in
say.
it. I was just in it. Like I was
was in it.
grateful. I was happy. I was really in it. So like that was the main thing that really stood out to me on phase one. And I really think that moment, I think it like set the tone of the trip for me. Like when I got in that space, I think I stayed there, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there was so much around us that was just amazing. I mean, all the wildlife we saw. I mean, we saw deer, we saw beaver, we saw
Groundhogs,
groundhog.
ducks,
Yeah. Remember the
chipmunks.
duck swimming down the river?
Oh,
I mean,
that moment is etched in my mind forever.
yeah, it's just so many things that were calming. I mean, what a way to set a tone for a ride. Like, how can you not be at peace with your surroundings?
Yeah. No, it's a great place to meditate. It's not hard to
Yeah.
find peace there.
And there's not a whole lot of change, right? I mean,
No?
the trail changes a little bit as far as like how
That's the thing. Yeah,
gets a
it's
little
not
more
distracting.
grassy or
You can
anything. But yeah, you know what the expectation is. You get in the groove. You're not going up and down. You're not having to look for people or cars.
right.
You're just immersed and that's it.
Yep. No, you're right. That was a very good time. I'm glad I did it. That was a really special moment for me. So, section 2 is the back mountain road. Basically, it's oh wait, let's see.
Yeah, the trail ends. So the Greenbrier Trail
It's six.
ends
Yeah, Briar Trail ends, and it's
in
16
Cass.
miles of back roads, basically, till we get to the
Right.
next rail to trail. So, what stood out to you on that 16 miles?
Well, I feel like it would be a shame to skip over Cass. I mean, we stopped there to eat, and
Yeah.
it's an old town that was basically built in a grid by a really rich man that owned a lumber company. And so the railroad was built to come into Cass for the lumber yard. And a lot of history. It's still intact. We stopped, we ate lunch there. And it was sort of like, okay, fill up your belly before the climb. Like get real. You're off of the trail, off of the river trail now.
Yeah.
There's so much history there. I mean, it was just really cool to go in there. It was like you just get sucked back in time. Like there was a drugstore where they had like old elixirs and like all kinds of cool
Yeah.
stuff and like what was it? Was it the speeder? Is
The
that what it's
speeder,
called?
yeah.
They had a speeder that
Which
was
is yeah, I mean they had a museum. It was interesting. It was an old time train station. Part of it was a diner, part of it was like merchandise and gifts and old timey elixirs and sodas and stuff. And then part of it was a museum. And in the museum they had something called a speeder, which was this like bicycle that you rode on the rail. I mean, that
yeah,
simple. And it was
yeah.
like it was super cool.
It is really neat.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned that because that was a great stop.
Yeah.
And it was 40 miles in, so we had worked up a pretty good hunger.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it was like perfectly
It was
spaced.
lunchtime. Yeah,
was
we
it
got
was
lucky
12
that was
o'clock.
there because there are very few restaurants. So for that to be there was great. Yeah.
And the people were great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And then we jumped on Back Mountain Road and we started climbing and shedding layers and testing out our climbing skills. And it's paved, which for a lot of West Virginia back roads is something to be thankful for, really. I mean, or maybe not if you like gravel, but we start climbing through a lot of farms and people who are really living off the grid and sustenance living, or maybe they have jobs. I don't know what they do. I would really
Who
love to know
knows?
what they do to live that life, but
Me
it's
too.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, that was what was neat about that segment is that I liked it because, the first 40 miles you don't see anyone or anything except for the wildlife. And then the next 16 miles, okay, first you're introduced to Cass. You meet some of the locals. They were all friendly as hell. And then you leave this like retail store and restaurant and you go and start to see the houses and the way that these people are living. And we talked about it on that ride is it was really just neat to see how these people are living. It's so different. I mean, we're living in College Station, Texas, like
Yeah.
we can
And it's not unique to West Virginia, but
right.
it's unique to anybody who lives in a city or a suburban area. I mean, it's
Oh
just
yeah.
anytime you
Yeah.
go out there and you see this And it's not just like a mountain cabin either that like somebody might visit once or twice
Right.
a year, you know?
No,
Like
they're
people
living
are
there.
living there with their goats and their sheep and their
Yeah.
cows and
All
you
that
know,
stuff. Yeah,
and their
so
4
I
dogs that
I
may or
really
may not
enjoy.
have wanted to chase us. Very few dogs though. I'm
No,
just
there
saying.
were a few dogs.
Surprisingly few dogs.
That was one thing that I took away, and then the other one was learning to climb. You know, being from Texas, we just don't get very many opportunities to climb, and there were some climbs on this section where we were like, you know, switchbacking on paved roads to make it up it.
Bank
But
turns.
I would like to just acknowledge the fact that you and I both made every single climb. We didn't walk a single damn one of them, and we fucking did the damn thing, you know?
Yeah.
And I was proud of that. You know, like it was
Yeah.
important to me
To not
that
walk them.
I conquered all those climbs. I didn't want to have to say that I walked one, you know? And if I
Yeah.
did walk one, then I walked one, but I wanted to climb them. I wanted to say that I did it, you know? And I did. And so did you. All right. So phase 3. What was phase 3?
Phase 3 was coming back down into Durban, and that was the start of the West Fork Trail. And that was super fun because we came down this like really steep paved section, and then we came to this bridge that didn't exist anymore. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh,
But,
I remember.
but we just picked our bikes up and we walked across, and it was a little sketchy. You know, we were glad we had our tetanus shot. So the third segment was getting on the West Fork Trail and riding some more of the rail trail. And that section was a little more rugged, if you will. Is that the right word?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a little bit
Less maintained.
Maintained.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the grass was kind of overgrown in places. Everything was completely rideable though.
Yeah.
Yeah. But just like you felt like you were in the woods again. It was more like double track forest road is what I would describe it as, you know?
Yeah. That sounds good.
Couple ruts. Like I remember hitting a rut and
More like forest trail, not forest road.
yeah,
But yeah.
not a road. Yeah, I think road is too giving.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember like hitting a rut and there being some kind of like bumps going up the bridges and down the bridges. But like for the most part, like everything was definitely rideable, but gorgeous, just gorgeous. Like it reminded me a little bit when we were in not Otter Creek. What was the botanical area that we went through?
Cedar Glade.
Cedar Glades?
Cranberry Glades.
Cranberry Glades, yes. Like towards the end, it kind of reminded me of that, like this like dried up lake bog type
Yeah,
scene
that's
where
right.
there was like kind of crazy plants that you don't normally see.
It was
and-
like swampy up high in the mountains. Yeah.
yeah, really cool. Really
Yeah.
cool.
It was cool. But it slowed us down.
It did.
That's when. So we had this time constraint of getting Keri to the rehearsal dinner, and this was the first time this segment. It was like 4 or 5 o'clock. Temperature started to drop, sun started to drop, and we weren't making as good a time as I thought we would be. So while I was first of all, I had no personal time constraints, so I was fine with whatever happened.
Yeah. We had lights. We
but-
had everything to ride in the dark.
Yeah, but you know, out of respect for you and trying to get you to where you needed to be, I was starting to realize that we were a little bit behind schedule. You know,
Mhm. Yeah, we may have chatted a little bit in that restaurant in Durban too long
Yeah.
too, but
Well,
it happens, you know.
they took forever to cook our food.
It was
But I'm
good,
not
though.
complaining because it was
It
in
was
the middle of
really
nowhere.
good.
I was just happy they were open. Every single time we went to a restaurant in the middle of fucking nowhere, I was just so glad it was just open.
Yeah.
That's all I don't care if it was the shittiest food I ever ate. The fact that it was open was all I cared about. All right. So phase 4 was the forest road that was going to take us back to camp. And we had 2 camp options. Remind me what they were?
Laurel Fork Campground and Seneca Lake. Or
Seneca.
sorry, Spruce Knob Lake.
And so we were going for Spruce Knob.
We were, yeah.
That was another, let's see. Oh shit, day 1. Yeah. So we were basically to get to Spruce Knob at this point, we were 16 miles on a forest road.
Mm-hmm.
So what stood out to you about
That segment?
Yeah.
Well, we came out and I remember the forest road that we were supposed to take to get straight there was closed. We were supposed to take Forest Road 35 and it was closed off. And so we went up there and we were kind of looking at, they had a detour on a map and, you know, it was a long detour. So I remember we were sitting there kind of talking things out. Like, should we just go? Like, are we technically not? Are we allowed to go? Should we ask for forgiveness? That sort of thing. You
Right.
know? Tough choice, right?
I mean, basically, we want to take that
we really
road.
wanted to go on that road because the detour was a lot longer to
Right.
go down and around.
Oh, yeah. We're 75 miles in or whatever
Yeah.
at this point.
And that's what sucks about being on a time constraint at all, right? I mean, most
Yeah.
people are when they ride. It's just a thing you have to deal
It's
with.
just, we all have lives.
Yeah. But like, if we didn't have a time constraint, we'd be like, oh, it's fine. Let's
No
just
big
go
deal.
this way.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah.
But we got really lucky because when I was standing up there looking at the sign, a forest ranger comes down the hill in his truck and stops and gets out of the truck and comes over to us. Actually, there was two of them and they both got out of the truck and they were so friendly. They were like the nicest guys. Like I was like thinking in my head after the fact, like how are these? Oh, they work in the forest all day.
Yeah, exactly.
Like how are these guys just happy on the job? They're like, what's your name? Oh, I'm so and so. Like almost like we were gonna become best friends. You know?
Yeah.
I mean,
What's
it
your
was-
Facebook?
Yeah. Like, what have you been up to lately? You know?
Yeah. At first, they wanted us to like take the detour, and they were telling us all about this detour.
They were
And,
probably really excited about their hard work, huh? They probably made that detour.
No, I get it. You know, they were doing their jobs. But I was like, listen, bro, we've been out here since 7:30 this morning. We're like 12 hours in at this point. We're tired. We need to get to this campsite. Like, can we traverse around this situation you got going on the road? Like, you know, and he's like, oh, well, I mean, it's totally rideable. There's just some like excavators in your way. And you're like, yeah, I think we can handle that.
Yeah, they're so used to talking to people in cars that they had to like change
Right.
their mind frame for
Yeah.
a second. Like, oh, a bike can fit through
Yeah,
there.
a bike can do that. And then the other forest ranger was like, well, technically, y'all are not motorized vehicles, so this road isn't closed to you. And I was like, yeah, technically, you're right. See you later.
All right, you guys are awesome. Bye.
Bye. Peace. I think you and I would have definitely gone on that route regardless if we didn't see them or not. I think that the reroute was too extreme.
The time constraint,
And the time
curiosity.
constraint. Yes,
Yeah,
all those things. We would have done it.
Mm-hmm.
But in this instance, we knew what we were walking into
Right,
or
which
riding
just made
into.
it nice, yeah.
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 So,
And great forest road, by the way.
oh, yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. And
It's-
the gradient was perfect.
Yeah. Forest Road, what, 35 you said? Yeah. Well done, gentlemen. Well done. No, I
This is
mean,
a well-made road.
it was pretty much all climbing. Again, so anytime you and I hear the word climbing, we're like, how bad is it going to be, you know? And it was good. It was just you get into a great rhythm and you climb and you enjoy everything around you and life slows down and life is beautiful and you're just
And
going.
because the road was closed. We
No
didn't see
cars.
Anybody.
Yeah, that's right.
Bonus.
Bonus. So, what stood out to me about that ride besides that was obviously the fact that it was my turn to get a flat.
Oh gosh, you're freaking flat tire.
Yeah. So, with like, I think about 6 miles left on day one to get to our campground, I got a flat. It was my turn, right?
Your turn.
My turn. So this was one of those flats that was like borderline in terms of like getting sealed by the stands. So I rode it for a while. I tried to get the stands at the bottom. Long story short, I basically got it kind of sealed with some bacon strips. I don't know what they're really called.
that were warped from the heat in Texas.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's another thing that I learned is that these bacon strips don't hold up in the heat of Texas. So like when I got it out to use it to plug this hole, uh it was just melted. It was not much was left. Honestly, if those things had worked, I think I would have been able to patch the hole and it would have been fine. But yeah, I mean, what stood out to me was, I mean, that was a beautiful road. And like, even getting that flat didn't bum me out. I took it in stride. It's fine. Let's just deal with this and let's move on with the intention that we were going to go to Spruce Knob.
Mhm.
But that flat just never really stopped leaking. Like, it was
Yeah.
just all like I could make it a mile and then I'd have to air it up or whatever. It was just becoming a problem. It was getting late. We were like 13 something hours in at this point, and you made the decision, which I think was the right one. You said, let's just
I'm
camp it.
calling it.
Where
Yeah.
did we camp? Laurel Fork?
Yeah. I think we were like a couple miles out from Laurel Fork, and I just thought, I think my mental game isn't as strong as yours.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that's what it
you-
is. I really do. I mean, I think you've had a lot more experience than I have with dealing with being cold and wet and tired and frustrated. And the stopping gets me. Like, if
Mm.
I can get in a flow and I just keep riding, but like when we have to stop every couple miles to check your tire and mess with it, I sort
Yeah.
of get, it's just something I need to work on. But I just
I-
felt done.
I don't think that's unusual, honestly. Like, I think like those things get to you, and I that's why I kind of felt, that's even why I mentioned it, where I was like, okay, I'm taking this in stride.
Yeah.
The
and
reason
at
I
that point, it
mentioned
was
that is
dark.
because like that's good. I mean,
Yeah.
that's an issue that you have to learn how to overcome, to like take those annoying things that pop up, the mechanicals or the weather, whatever it is. Like, you really just have to learn how to take those things in stride. So
Yeah.
there's no shame in that. It's just like,
It's also like unfathomable to me to like change a flat tire and like put in a tube and all that stuff in the dark when you're that tired and hungry and you just want to like lay down. Like,
yeah,
to me, it was like, well, we could either just ride into camp and make it there with maybe one more CO2 or something like that and worry about it in the daylight of the morning when we have fresh minds and maybe have some coffee and some food and start fresh and then
Yeah.
like make up the miles. Like, in my mind, I was like, oh, we'll make up the miles tomorrow,
well, you're complimenting me on my ability to like mentally push through, but ultimately, I think you were the one who made the right call to stop and camp. So maybe that was a result of you being mentally tired, but what that allowed us to do was, I mean, first of all, I was personally in a really good space mentally and physically. Like, when we rolled into camp, yeah, my tire was flat. I didn't really give a shit. God, it
More
was
just blown away by
so
the
beautiful.
stars.
There were so many stars. We are in the middle of nowhere, and we're
Yeah.
about to pop up some hammock. We're about to set up some hammocks and just sleep under the stars. Like, I was so,
Pumped for that.
oh
I
man,
know, because that's totally part of it.
yeah,
It's a big part of it. And
Yeah.
all I wanted was some stars. I mean, the reason why I picked out Spruce Knob Lake was for the stargazing. I mean, that
Yeah,
area of
that's
West
true.
Virginia is very little light pollution and is kind of known for being able to see a lot of great stars for the East Coast. And so that's all I wanted. And then when we stopped there, I was like, I got everything I wanted.
So, I mean, ultimately, like, day one was for me, and I think for you, like, we both, it was a big day. I mean, we did 85 miles. We climbed a lot. We went through some flats. We had some mechanicals. We had some road closures. Like, shouldn't it just go
Yeah,
perfect?
adventure.
But yeah, we adventured, and like, well, you speak for yourself, but for me, I went to bed that night very happy, very accomplished,
Yeah.
very in the moment, you know?
Mm-hmm. Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So then we start day two, which, just to set the scene, Uh, well, I actually thought it was really funny. I am not a morning person by any stretch.
No, you are not.
No,
I can
it's
vouch for that, people.
11:36 p.m. right now, and I'm on fire, and Carrie's like begging to go to bed. But like, so this is what makes this great, though, is Carrie woke up. I don't know. Do you remember? Was it 5:30 in the morning? I think it was 5:30,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sleeping dead to the world in the hammock, and Carrie goes out in 40-degree temperature, like it's getting cold. Again, we came from 109, and she makes coffee. And not only did she make coffee, but I had bought these new coffee things, and didn't she go through two of them?
I'm a dum-dum. I couldn't
Well,
figure out how to use a filter.
I didn't try to use one, so I don't know if it was you or the product, but either way, she went through
Well, the
two.
first one had a hole in it, so I'll give myself that. But I was trying to make him coffee.
Yeah. Well, you did make me coffee, and you brought it to me in the hammock. And I remember when you did that, I was like, if you're going to do that, then I'm going to get my ass up. I mean, that's fair. If you're going to do that, then yeah, I'm going to get my ass up. And so anyway, that was kind of how the morning started, but it was a beautiful morning. It was really cold for us. But the biggest question mark, and I think you forgot about it. I think it was out of your mind, but the biggest question mark in my head was that flat tire.
Yeah, is it still holding air right now or not?
And
Yeah.
the only reason I even gave a shot was because I didn't want to have to change the tire with cold hands.
Yeah, with 40 degrees.
Yeah. If it was like 80 degrees outside, I'd be like, I'll just throw a tube in there real quick and we'll be on our way, whatever. But
I know.
But
the time constraint again.
Yeah.
Me getting to that wedding was a big deal.
That's true.
And at that point, I hadn't given up quite yet.
Oh no, we were still so at the beginning of day 2. We're thinking we have about 45 miles.
Mm-hmm.
45 miles. Like, what is that?
No,
4.5
that's nothing.
hours?
Yeah, we can
Like-
do that easy.
like,
yeah.
Yeah.
No big deal.
And that was part of your motivation for getting on the road. So you and I, again, set out at 7:30 in the morning, which for us is like really early. And we have 16 miles of climbing.
Yeah, it was 16 miles. I think that's
Day
right.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah, 16 miles. So we have 16 miles of climbing that first morning.
On
And-
gravel, but it was super nice gravel.
Yeah. So tell us about that morning. Tell me about your experience, because really you and I kind of separated. I think you were feeling pretty good. You were motivated, and you kind of took the lead and were headed out. And I was, again, I'm not a morning person. I was slow.
Yeah. I mean, I think I was really motivated to get there on Friday night. I don't want to make it seem like the whole thing was like revolved around like getting to that rehearsal dinner, but I
But-
felt obligated.
Well, and
And
it's
I
kind of a
felt like-
challenge.
yeah, it was like-
it was more fun. It was like,
Right.
okay, we have a deadline.
Yeah,
Like, let's make
it's
this
almost
happen.
like
It's like
being
a
in
race.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I do remember, so I have to fess up to something right now that I can fess up to. Drama.
Oh, goody.
One of the things that I learned on this trip, and I got a little bit of flack from you for, was not carrying enough water.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of did a similar thing to what you did, where I woke up in the morning and I carried less water. Okay, so I actually dumped out my big water bottle on the bottom. I don't know how many ounces that is. How many
64.
ounces? 64 ounce. When we were leaving Cass, I dumped out my 64 ounce because I thought that, okay, well, we're going to get to the campground before dark and we're going to do all this climbing. And we're also stopping in Durban. And there's like absolutely no reason why I need all this water. We're riding on the Greenbrier or Westport Trail. There's plenty of water. Anyways, I dumped that out pretty early on and didn't consider refilling that. I refilled my other 2 water bottles, but I didn't refill that. And when we got there, we had a water filter, but the water was freezing. And I just thought in my head, oh, will those be a spigot? There was not a spigot. If there was, I didn't find it. And so
So that's why you were looking around for water.
I started the
Spigot.
morning out looking around for a water spigot.
Yeah.
Yeah, while you were like finishing, like getting up and getting ready. And I didn't find one. And I thought, okay, I could stick my hands in that 40-degree water. So the water filter we brought it's really cool. It's like a squeeze bottle, right? And you stick it down in the water and you kind of wait for it to fill up and you put the cap on and then you squeeze it into your water bottle. And it's really nice except for cold water. So that's when like the standard one that floats on top of the water and you kind of, put it on top of your bottle and pump it in works better. So that was like kind of a lesson learned too. It was like, and my hands would have warmed back up, but it was just sort of a comfort thing. Like you're saying, like you don't want to change your tire when it's 40. I didn't want to do that. But, you got to do what you got to do when you're out there, So
Yeah, if you
anyways,
have to. Yeah.
I was feeling great though, like when we started, but that's what I started out the morning doing was like, okay, I need to be more responsible and like find some water right now. But then I was like, okay, we have 60 miles, then we're going to like climb and then we'll get to Spruce Knob Lake and I can refill there,
Yeah.
Well, then we get to Spruce Knob Lake. Oh my gosh, that place is so gorgeous. Do you want to talk about it? I feel like I can't do it justice. I don't know.
Well, you skipped the whole 16-mile climb.
Oh, well, what is there to say? I mean, we climbed.
Well, what stood out to me about that 16-mile climb was I don't know if you can really describe the setting, but you're talking about winding, rolling mountain country roads with idyllic little houses, white houses with barns, just rolling hills and valleys and cattle that are strewn about. And it was just like, it was so beautiful and peaceful and relaxing. Like, I'm so glad that we climbed that section and we didn't, descend that section because it was just, I pictured myself living in one of those houses. I pictured myself living off of this road and just living in this environment,
Yeah. So we came out of the national forest. Honestly, I don't want to lie. I kind of forgot about that for a second. But these two families have owned these two very large farms. I don't know how much acreage they own, but they own this acreage and it's almost, you're right. It's like otherworldly. Like the way I felt when we were riding through it was like, are we in Scotland?
Yeah.
Or like
Ireland.
Yeah, Lord of the Rings. Like
Yeah.
it was very much like a Lord of the Rings feel. Right?
Yeah.
Like lots of sheep and like maybe there could have been somebody's burrow like in the mountain there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where the Sinks of the Gandhi are, which we didn't get to check out because of the time constraint, but very cool like cave system that goes underground and like the stream runs through the ground. It's called the Sinks, and so lots of limestone. But yeah, it's sort of otherworldly, isn't it?
Yeah. All right. And so then after we make this epic climb, it was actually like, it was good because it was cold as shit and it kind of warmed us up.
Oh yeah.
And then we got to the top and then we had a 10-mile downhill where we lost 2,500 feet of elevation and I orgasmed 5 times. I mean, I was orgasming in my mind, like, it just kept going and going and going and going. It was crazy.
It was fun. Yeah, it's
Like,
totally fun.
I was literally laughing at myself. Like, you should,
like, how can something be this enjoyable?
at this moment in time, weeks later or a week later, I still cannot fathom. It was just so good.
Yeah.
And the great thing about that downhill is that it led to breakfast. Right?
It's so funny how we took different things away from the morning.
Okay.
We totally did. Did you notice that? Like my first jump to is like Spruce Knob Lake and just sitting with my feet hanging over.
Yeah.
And sitting on the lake, and it was so quiet, and there's like this fog rolling across the lake.
Yeah.
And, we may have just enjoyed that moment, and like super slow. And like you picked out your favorite thing was like, let's bomb this freaking hill and go back down the mountain in style.
I picked out like the scenery on the way up and the bombing on the downhill.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I enjoyed that lake, but it
not what's stuck in your mind.
It's not.
Yeah.
It wasn't. I don't know. Yeah.
I felt like we probably looked like absolute psychos coming down that mountain just because we were smiling like ear to ear. Like if somebody passed us, they'd be like.
And then that downhill was the most glorious thing I think I've ever experienced on a bicycle, period. And
what makes it fun though? Is it the wind in your hair, like the turns, or like the fact that you're going really fast?
I think that's a good question. It's definitely the thrill. You know, I am a person who will push my boundaries.
You're taking those turns as fast as you possibly can.
Within whatever I think is reasonable. Right. And so that's where there's a thin
the gravel.
line.
Like you don't know if the gravel is going to be there until you hit the turn. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're just assuming there's no gravel.
No, I mean, I'm accounting for that there could be gravel, and sometimes there is, and sometimes you have to weight your bike correctly so that you slide, but then the tire has enough grip to catch the tarmac and you keep going. I mean,
wow, you're accounting for a lot more things in your head from experience than I would be.
You know? I mean, yeah. There's a lot. I think that's an interesting point. It's like when I'm doing that for 10 miles, there's a lot going on inside my head. And that's part of the thrill is like keeping up with all those equations that I'm factoring in, the speed, the curve, the possibility of this, the bank, if there's a car. I mean, everything, you know, and you're having to do that in such a short amount of time. And if you're able to do that and also enjoy it and relax and find
I can't even not smile right now just talking about it. It's so funny.
Yeah.
It's like a perma smile goes across your face.
Yeah. All right. So the downhill was great.
Amazing. Yeah. Like I remember being like, woohoo.
But the interesting thing about the downhill is like, okay, we're behind schedule and we need to be off the mountain and to our car by 2 p.m.
Yeah, then it was starting to set in.
And then we are rolling into this restaurant at the bottom of the downhill at 12 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
So at this point, at this restaurant, we have, what was it? 20 miles. We have 20 miles back to the car, and we only have 2 hours to accomplish it in order for you to be on time and not sweaty and in your cycling clothes. Like you need a little bit of time. So we had
to average 10 miles per hour up what we had next, which was that epic climb up Mountaineer Drive on Route 33. That was the 6 miles, right? 6 miles and 5,000 feet. And then the Imba Epic.
Yep.
And we have done an Imba Epic, part of it, before. So we knew it wasn't going to be super clean, but we were still at that point, I think is when it really started to set in like, hey, maybe this isn't going to happen.
You're skipping ahead. We got to talk about the climb.
No, I'm just saying like when we were at the restaurant is when it really started to set into me like, hey, 2 hours, averaging 10, like maybe this isn't going to happen. And that's when we started looking for cell phone service because I was like, well, we could bail out. We could call my friend Leah who lives down here. It would be a drive for her, but maybe if I called her, she could bail us out. She could just drive us back to the car and I could be a responsible person and do what I said I was going to do.
Once in your life.
For once in my life, would somebody please just depend on me and make it there. But we didn't have service. And that was our first taste of, hey, we can't just call anyone when we feel like it or look up something when we feel like it or, you know what I mean? Like
it was our first taste when we really needed it, when we were in a situation where we're like,
hey, we need to call someone right now.
Yeah. And like get a ride. And we
Right.
couldn't.
Right.
We couldn't. You tried and it didn't happen.
Yeah, I did.
Do you remember the sign that was on the counter at that restaurant?
Mm-mm.
So there was a sign on the counter that said, there's no Wi-Fi here. Pretend it's 1993 and actually talk to each other.
Perfect.
Right? And that sums up where we were. Like,
Well, we're here.
we are in 1993. There is no cell phone. There is no internet. Like,
And what a blessing, by the way.
Yeah.
Actually talking to each other.
it's fun to be in that restaurant with no service and having to figure this stuff out. Just me and you. Like,
Yeah.
we couldn't rely on a shuttle. We couldn't rely on your friend. It was just,
Me and
okay.
you. We're there. We
Here-
got to figure this out.
here's the
Yeah.
situation.
And maybe
and
not a blessing
ultimately-
for us in that moment, but what a blessing for everyone else that comes into that restaurant because
Yeah.
nobody's talking on their cell phone. Nobody's staring at their cell phone. They're actually
I think it was a
forced
blessing for
to
us.
sit there and talk to each other.
Yeah, I think it was a blessing for us. I think it was a way that the universe intended it to be. So we start out on this climb with, shall I say, very full bellies
With a
and
steak burger in my belly.
yeah, that's true, a steak burger. And even as we're starting to climb, Keri has not given up on the idea of having a cell phone service or hitching a ride up the mountains. So
I really wanted to get there.
yeah, no, you tried and you should have
Really felt
tried.
bad.
And I think you should have tried. It was the right thing to do. I had no time constraints, so I'm like, hey, you do you. If we hitch a ride, we hitch a ride. If we don't, we don't. I don't care. Either way, I'm in it. Whatever happens. But I mean, you're making an effort. But at some point,
I mean, I stuck my butt, my thumb out. What else can you do?
what else can you do? At some point, you just have to grind it out. At
Yep.
some point, there's a 5 mile there. At some point, there is basically 18 miles between you and your car, and that car is the only thing that's going to get you to the
Ready
wedding
to go.
that you have to be in that next day. So we gave up. You and I commend you on this. You just said, "Fuck it. I'm not gonna make the wedding, or no, I'm not gonna make the rehearsal dinner. I tried. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna make the wedding. That's the new goal, and I'm gonna enjoy what happens between now and then. And so I thought that was like, I was grateful that you made that decision because there's nothing else you could have done. Like, you tried, right? So now you just have to climb that fucking mountain. You got to ride that epic, and you got to get to your car, and that's it, right?
Yeah. I was really wanting to make this climb happen, and I felt like,
We didn't have any choice. That's the thing. It's like we had to go to our car. We couldn't call anybody. There was no other option. Like, legitimately,
you're right.
the only thing we could do is climb this
You're
fucking
right.
mountain,
You're so right.
get on the Imba Epic.
Yeah.
It didn't matter that it was scary. It didn't matter that it was sketchy. We didn't have any other option.
You're right. So we start riding it,
Yeah.
and you are like a freaking, you were just riding like you've never ridden before.
It's true.
You were like fresh leg, like a little bunny. You were just like, bam, here I go. People look out. Like, just like riding so freaking fast. And I was like, I shouldn't have got the steak burger because obviously I am lagging behind. I'm like crazy right now.
Sirloin steak burger.
I just had to. I mean, it was like, if this is on the menu, I have to order it. Anyways, so like, you were feeling good. I was feeling good too, but I wasn't feeling nearly as good as
That
you.
was a hard, I do not want to diminish the fact that that was a hard fucking climb, but I felt like I never felt like I couldn't do it,
Yeah.
So when you're saying I was hopping like a bunny, not exactly, but
Yeah.
I was proud of myself. Like,
Mhm. No,
yeah.
you were killing it for sure. Like and so
I feel like I made up for Colorado, honestly.
yeah,
Like when
you totally did.
whenever we
Redemption.
went to Colorado, it
Mhm.
was the exact opposite. And you were just like floating up these mountains, and I was like, every inch was a struggle, you
Yeah,
know?
good day, bad day,
Yeah.
right? Like everybody has them, right?
Well, that's what I love about our relationship and riding together is like we always seem to somehow support each other. Yeah, you know? So like
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It didn't feel like, oh, I'm doing this. It felt like I can be there for Keri. I can like, you know,
Yeah,
give her the
was
positive energy she
I
needs.
needed that at that moment for sure.
Yeah.
That was a mental thing for me, you know? Like
Yeah.
I was not mentally you say that you're happy that I accepted it, but I was still coming around at that moment,
I
right?
know.
So I hadn't prepared myself mentally for that
I
climb.
accepted it and I drug you into that acceptance.
Yeah, you didn't drag me, but I was just like I think I was still in some in between period at first, you know? And for climbs, I feel like you really got to want it, you know? You got to be mad at
Oh,
it.
yeah.
You got to just really want to get to the top to see that view or to conquer it or whatever.
Yeah.
And it took me a couple miles to get there.
Well,
Couple
you were
miles too
questioning.
late, you
Yeah.
know?
You were questioning.
Yeah. But I mean, anyway,
At
so
some point you're just like, this is my reality. There is no cell phone service. There's no other options.
right, I'm in this. Yeah.
I have to go
And-
forward. Long story short, we both struggled. We both struggled to climb that. I might have struggled less than you did,
Mhm.
but that was not an easy climb by any stretch of the imagination. It was getting hot. We were begging for any amount of shade we could get. The cars were sometimes gracious and sometimes
Not so much.
And the only thing I cared about was getting to the top so I could get off of the fucking road. Like
Yeah.
what motivated
Yeah.
me was getting away from all that
Yeah.
shit. And so when we did it.
So
Yeah.
anyways, the wedding is over. Moving on.
The rehearsal dinner is over.
The wedding's off.
Ah!
Okay, but then we got to go to the Imba Epic.
Which like we were both very excited about. When we got to the Imba Epic, we got away from the cars. We both like took, I don't know, we just hung out for 30 minutes and recuperated.
Yeah, it was like, oh, we're away from cars passing us and like loud noises and like
Back to the
craziness.
woods.
Yeah, we're like back in nature. It was so nice to get on single track.
So we started out the Imba Epic really feeling very good. I mean, we knew we missed rehearsal dinner, so now it's just let's enjoy this. Let's enjoy the views.
Yeah.
You know, let's get on with
So
it.
I picked this epic because it's called the North Fork Mountain Trail, and it has these really amazing scenic views looking down into canyons, like valleys, and I mean, there's just outcroppings everywhere. Basically, you could hike off the trail like every couple miles and see this really scenic view.
Yeah.
And it just seemed really cool to ride a ridge. I love riding ridge lines. You know, in Colorado, it's kind of scary because you can get struck by lightning or things can happen. And not that that can't happen in West Virginia, but it's just like riding ridgeline trails is amazing, you know? Once you get to the top, you're just coasting along with all the great views.
Yeah. That trail was way more rugged than I anticipated. Like we read the reviews, we'd been on an Imba Epic before, kind of familiar with it. But this trail was so rocky and overgrown and undermaintained that it caused us to go extremely slow. Like it was beating us up, you know? And so like we did like 5 or 6 miles of it and you were starting to wear down.
Yeah, I think it was affecting me more than you, let's be honest. Like
It
I
was.
was on my Fargo and I love my Fargo, but it was just it beat me up. You were on your new bike. You had some suspension. you were on like some freaking high, like I said, on the climb going into the trail. You were just like mentally, you were just in it.
Oh, I was loving
He was
it.
in it.
I was
people.
loving it. The harder it got, the happier I was. Yeah, I was loving it.
And I just was super jealous of your because the rocks were so rough.
Yeah.
Super jagged everywhere, numerous. Just, it was brutal.
Yeah.
It was so beautiful though.
So, I mean, at some point, you looked at me and you were like, I'm done. Mentally, physically, we're 125 miles into this. We've been going at it. And you just were like kind of mentally tapped out.
Yeah.
And you I right now think it was the right thing to do. You told me
I'm slowing down.
I mean, you weren't erratic or irrational.
I was still in my happy place.
Yeah, you were fine.
I was this perfect mix of I'm so happy to be here, but I'm so done right now too.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
even know how that's possible, but I knew my miles per hour was slowing down very rapidly.
Well, the truth is, like, if you and I didn't have a deadline, we were both very happy. We would have pitched our hammocks in that spot. We would have camped on that ridge line and we would have continued on the next day. But because we had to get to the wedding, you said, go ahead, go get the car. And
Please.
please. And I'll be at the trailhead basically. Right. So, that's
I did
where
the math and I thought by the time I do this many miles on the trail and by the time he does that many miles on the trail plus this many miles on the road to get to town and then drives up here, it'll probably equal out to be about the same. That's how slow I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fine.
It happens.
I mean, again, you were in your happy place. Like
I was so in my happy
I wasn't
place.
leaving you in distress.
We
I was
had a
leaving
conversation
you.
and I was like, hey, I want you to leave me.
Yeah.
I'm not in a spot where I'm afraid or I'm scared you're not going to come back or I'm afraid I'm not going to make it out of here. I just know that I'm slow and that I'm dwindling. And I feel like it's better if you enjoy the trail at the pace you're riding right now and really get the most out of it and get to the car and you'll still be in your happy place. And then you come and get me.
Yep.
And that's just how I felt.
No, I mean, again, you and I, throughout our relationship and our riding, we've gone back and forth. And this was simply an opportunity for me to repay other debts that you have, accrued over the years. So like,
You're being very generous, but yes.
but like, so this is where things get interesting because the truth is like, we were getting late on time. We were completely out of food and we were very low on water.
Yeah.
And so when I left you, I took, the quarter of liter that I had and we divided it.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't really think too much about this because at this point it was like, okay, I only have like 5 miles into the trail. Then I'm going to get on this like 3-4 mile descent, nice paved road down to Seneca Rocks where our car is. I'm going to get on that and I'm going to drive back and pick you up. Like, I mean, at this point we were thinking this is completely a great idea and everything's great. And so
Gravy train.
yeah, I mean, I get to the end of the Imba Epic and I take the GPS instructions to the left and the road, quote unquote, quickly turns to not a road.
I totally screwed up.
What I get to is, first of all, there was like a road, a limestone road where you can tell cars have driven. This only lasted for like 100 yards. And then it was like native grasses had grown up and it started to drop significantly. So I started riding down this And then it got to the point where I rode down and it got so steep that I almost endoed. And so I was like, okay, hold on. I'm going to stop here. I almost endoed and rolled down this fucking mountain. So I'm just going to take a break. And I started looking at my surroundings. I looked at the map and I'm like, this isn't right. This is not right. And so, as tired as I was, and as much as I would rather be going downhill, I decided that I was going to go back uphill to the trail, basically. And that's where I call you, and I was like, okay, first of all, do not go down that road. That is not a road. And I'm going to go this other, what I thought from my maths and stuff, I'm going to go this other road. And what I want you to do is basically just stay here. Stay here, and I'm going to come and get you. I'm going to go down the mountain.
When he says from his maps and stuff, I made this route and I used Rabbit GPS, and I had never used Rabbit GPS. And there may be a way to differentiate. I'm sure there is a way to differentiate between different routes on that map. But what I failed to do was recognize that there's a difference between is it drawing a route and making a route? What was the difference? I drew the line. Once we got on the start of the epic, I started drawing a trail versus following a trail. And when you go into that portion where you start drawing the trail, you're not necessarily following a route that maybe exists. They're assuming that you know where the fuck you're going, basically. Like, it was my first time using the app. I learned a lot of lessons. Number one, don't necessarily use one source of information to form a route, because basically what happened was what I thought was a road for Patrick ended up being a gas pipeline throughway, which went straight down the mountain, straight back up and straight back down. And I'm not talking it just wasn't, it's not rideable. It's not drivable. Like, you could probably get an ATV on it, but it would still be nasty.
Yeah.
You know?
I actually have the stats here. It was 3 miles. I descended 2,200 feet, which is an average grade of 13.2%. And it maxed out around like 45%. So like there was points of that descent where, legitimately I almost fell down the mountain.
Were you walking your bike or were you riding?
I rode what I could, and I walked. I would say I walked or stumbled 75% of it, and I rode 25% of it.
Yeah. And and you're talking about like at the end of a long ride, when you're running low on fuel and water, and maybe you're not thinking so clearly. It's like,
it was tough. But I will say that, like, I'm really happy with the decisions that I made. Like,
oh yeah,
every moment that I came to, I looked at it. I was like, okay, the decision I'm about to make, because when you're about to descend 2,200 feet in 3 miles, like, you're not going to go back up the mountain. Like, you're just done. Yeah. So you need to be aware of that. You need to say, okay, is this the right thing to do?
Is this the right choice? Because if I go down this.
The truth is like, when I was making those decisions, I didn't know if I was right or wrong. Like, there was a great deal of uncertainty. I thought that I was right, and I did it, and it turns out I was right. And the path that I took led to the road that took me down to Seneca Rocks, that took me to our car. And that was such an amazing feeling. I mean, I
followed your gut.
I did. I followed everything that I learned through Boy Scouts and bikes and everything in life. Like, I took everything that I learned and I applied that in that moment. I stayed calm, and it was really a great feeling to ride down that paved road to Seneca Rocks with our
sure.
our
When
car.
you hit pavement, you're probably like, yay.
Because I knew I could come get you.
You did so much better than
I
I
knew
did
it doesn't.
mentally.
No.
Yeah, you did.
I knew I could come get you. You know, like it's a different thing whenever you know that my wife is relying on me. She is stuck on a mountain and
Yeah.
she's relying on me to
And
get
when
to
you
that
say
car.
stuck, you're not that far off because after you left, like I said, I was still in my happy place. Then I got to a spot where the trail got so steep that I obviously couldn't ride it because so things that I could ride normally on pavement or when I wasn't tired became impossible with a bikepacking bike with weight on it on technical trail that is steep. It's just a matter of fact, like just combining all those elements. I was tired, all of those elements together. I felt shaky on all of that. Okay.
No.
So I got to a spot where you remember the spot, I'm sure.
Oh,
It became so
yes.
steep that I didn't even know if I could push my bike up it. Like I really didn't. It was like there was these huge, not even huge, just decently sized rock garden that would
grade.
jump up. And it was almost like steps going uphill, you know? And it was so steep. I was like, can I push this? Like, I
You
haven't
started thinking
lifted
about-
weights lately with
Yep.
my arms.
You start thinking about dismantling your bike. You're like, I'll take
Yeah.
all the parts off. I'll carrying them up one by one.
Oh my God. I
Because
really thought I was
that
going to
would-
have to take the bags off.
30 trips up and down this thing, one
Dude.
piece at a time, would be way easier than actually climbing it.
No, that's what got me at the top is that I didn't want to fucking do that.
Exactly. Me too.
I was like, I could take all like that. I started thinking about that. I was like,
I did too.
I could take all the bags off my bike and then push it up this thing.
Yep.
But like also it was like a mental game because it was like almost like when you're mountain biking and you try to navigate in between the rocks. So like I was holding my brakes every time I stopped,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And then I would let go of my brakes and I would like twist and turn in between two rocks to like get over the next hump. And then I would put back on my brakes and I'd be like, God, oh God. And then I'd like be like, okay, here I go. I'm going to left my brakes again. Okay, I'm going to go left and right. I mean, it was like this super strategic thing that I had to do to get up over this fucking mountain.
Yeah.
And then I started second guessing myself that I was even on the trail anymore. I was like, surely no one would put this on a fucking trail. Like I must be on like a side trail that leads to an overlook or something, you know? Like surely Patrick would not let me do this.
This is your route. I don't know what you're talking about.
I did this to
The whole time
myself.
I'm doing it, I'm like, surely Keri wouldn't do this to me. But yes, you and I experienced that segment of the trail in very similar ways. It was my concern on that section was that I almost considered just stopping there and waiting for you.
Yeah. I would have been concerned about me too.
I mean, I barely made it.
All I knew was that it was an IMBA epic and that it was supposed to be epic. And that even though I was suffering, I was supposed to be suffering because that's what IMBA meant for me to do.
Yeah.
So I just.
That section
just
was a
kept going.
little extreme.
So, I mean, you were joking earlier in the podcast about this route is under construction. This was not for the faint of heart. And I'm not a wuss. Like, yes, we were at the end of a freaking long ass ride, right? And I was tired. Maybe I didn't drink enough water because I learned some lessons about water. But regardless of that, at best, if you were on the right bike, which would be a mountain bike for this trail, for sure, like dual suspension, maybe front suspension, but good front suspension, and you didn't have that much weight on your bike to throw you around, it still would have been a hard trail.
Yeah.
I mean, I would compare it to like
Even if let's say you had none of that and you just had a full suspension bike.
It still would have been a hard trail.
It's a challenging trail for sure.
There were
Yes.
trees down everywhere. There were rocks everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, it was tough, you know? But I have never been so immersed in nature and felt like I was in my happy place and suffering at the same time. I can honestly say that.
I believe that.
That is the most fun and the most suffering I've done at the same time ever in my life.
Yeah, that's interesting. And that's exactly what I perceived from you. Like when we were communicating, I saw you were starting to get tired. I mean, I knew you were struggling, but you were never defeated. You were never negative about it. You were just like, yes, I am struggling. Yes, this sucks. But yes, I'm also in a beautiful place and I'm going to enjoy the fact that I'm here.
So enjoying it. All I wanted to do was I passed like 3 overlooks during that time, during that short like 7 miles that we were apart, or 6 miles even. I don't even know.
It was a long
Seemed
6 miles.
Way longer, right?
Golly.
But I passed a couple overlooks and all I wanted to do was go sit there and watch the sunset because it looks so epic.
Yeah.
And I was like, I can't. I have to be where I said I was going to be before we split up, you know? Like I can't just like sit here and like wait till dark and then and I did not want to be on that trail in the dark, by the way.
Yeah.
Even though we had the proper lighting, that was like a lot of motivation. Like get the fuck off this trail before dark, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, I was in a weird place where I was like super excited about where I was, but then struggling and then I get in this really thick section of rhododendron at Mountain Laurel. And I see another bear. And he's like running down the trail away from me this time instead of across. So I got like a much longer view of him. And it was so cute and funny because he was like running away from me. So his little butt was in my face. But then like he was looking behind him, you know, like at me while he was running away. And it was just like, it was sort of like there's just things that when I was tired kept like zoning me back into the trail.
Yeah.
Like, wake up, you know, like you're out here. This is happening. You're in this, you know, and like bears are my favorite thing in the whole wide world almost. And like just seeing that was like, oh my God, I'm so lucky that I'm stuck out here right now, still on the trail. Like it just made me feel like I'm lucky to be here right now, even though I'm tired and all these things.
Yeah, if you hadn't done everything you've done, if
you hadn't suffered
at that moment,
I would have never got that moment.
If you didn't climb that fucking thing, and you wouldn't have been there. You wouldn't have been there at that time to see that bear.
Just that moment was like,
it makes it all
so
worth
it to me. It like sealed it. It sealed the deal.
Those are the moments that everybody has that they just have to go out and find them because they're there, you know?
Yeah. And the thing that I think kept frustrating me the most was that I couldn't get a groove on that trail.
Yeah, that frustrated you. It was frustrating.
Like there were so many down trees. Like I'd finally get back on my bike and feel like, oh, I can tackle this next rock garden and there's a trail down, you know?
But again, adventure.
Oh God, we asked for it. We got it.
We asked for it and we got it. You know, it's fine. It's fine.
So I made it out of the woods and it wasn't dark. And I was the happiest girl in the world. When I saw like double track, I was like, oh my God, I made it to a place where maybe Patrick can come and get me if he makes it back to the car on his own epic adventure that he's on right now, you know, like, because I felt like I at least need to make it to a spot where you can get to me, you know, that's like,
well, yeah.
Like you can, if I stop on this mountain bike trail right now, you can't get to me here. So I'm either gonna have to leave my fucking bike in the woods. And hike out, which believe me, crossed my mind once or twice.
It crossed mine as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought you were struggling way less than me. So that's like really surprising.
Oh, no. I meant that I was going to have to get you and your bike.
Okay. Well, that's embarrassing. Can we edit that out too?
Oh, of course.
Okay, moving on. I made it to a safe place where I felt like Patrick can come get me. And I wrote down, I read the trail. I got service again. And so we touched base and you sent me a text, the best text I've ever gotten in my whole life. It was, Made it to the general store and the car. Getting beer, food, and supplies. See you soon.
Well, I have to say that from my perspective, that was one of the best texts I've ever sent because I'm your like knight in shining armor. Like I've been on this epic adventure traversing down a mountain. And yeah, like it was a feeling of great accomplishment. Like I felt good. I didn't feel amazing. Honestly, like I didn't feel like I was done. I was so happy to be there. I was happy to have cell phone service. I was happy to have water and food. But my wife is on a mountain with no water and no food. So like
I was out of water.
there was like a level of excitement and a level of or much more greater level of urgency. Like, okay, let's do this fast. I want to let Keri know that I'm coming.
Yeah, because I came to the realization when I was on that gravel road that what you did was the shortest path by far going down that treacherous slope, and that the alternatives were 10 more miles north on the North Fork Mountain Bike Trail, which I had been averaging about 2 miles per hour at that point on.
Yeah.
And then riding east down the mountain and then riding up north all the way until I got to the edge of North Fork, 10 miles, and then curving around and coming all the way back down another 10 miles down to Seneca. So I think it was like, maybe when you added it all up, it was like another 40 miles. I mean, it was a long way. Like as the crow flies, we were very close to the car. But when that route disappeared, it became very far.
Yeah.
And so I was just like, if he doesn't make it to the car, I'm going to have to, I knew I was going to make it 40 miles that night. But I thought in my head, I'm going to have to sleep here. I'm going to have to hang on my hammock. And then in the morning, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to have to ride these forest roads down. And I'm going to have to ride a very long way with no food and water. Yeah. Lesson learned. Carry more water.
I think that's one of the mistakes that could easily be corrected. But, long story short, ultimately, I feel like we made good decisions. Like you were getting tired. You knew the position you were in. You weren't mentally in a bad place. You were happy. And you also recognized where I was at and that I had the ability to go down, get the car, and come get you. I think it was the right decision.
You're my hero.
We just didn't realize.
I recognize that you were spunky.
We
you still that spunk.
We didn't realize that I was going to have to traverse down a mountain. That's the part we didn't know.
So glad you're okay. Because God, that sounds fucking frightening.
It was fun. I mean, right now it was fun. It was a thrill. It was being in a situation that mattered. Like when are you really in situations in life that really matter?
Make you feel alive.
That like, it's like this decision that I'm making right now, and this one right now, and this one right now. Everything that I'm doing, every step that I take, when I get on my bike,
matters to someone or something, right?
Yes.
In addition to yourself.
Yeah. Outside of myself, you were relying on me to come get you.
Yes, I was.
So
very much so.
So like, it was nice to be put in a situation where I was tested to find out if where I'm at in that, and I feel good about it. I don't recommend that people put themselves in those situations.
No, we're telling this story for a reason, to be a lesson learned case.
Whatever. But I think it's important that
you did become way more handsome whenever you saved me.
Oh, I mean, well, yeah, you were pretty worn out whenever I found you.
So I was deliriously thinking you were handsome.
Afterwards, I became more handsome.
I mean, you had like an hour drive to come get me. That's a long way. Even
Babe,
after you got
I
the
was
car.
in a car with air conditioning.
Well, okay, good point. And food and everything.
Yeah, I had beer, food.
Yeah,
I mean,
water.
I had a bacon cheeseburger. I mean, I had no.
Yeah.
I felt guilty. I actually felt guilty for eating that food.
Mhm.
Like there was a part of me that was like,
Oh my gosh, that's so sweet.
I should just wait and
Oh, people are puking right now. Listen to
oh
this.
my gosh,
They're
whatever.
like, "Oh, you guys are so cute." Blah.
No, I mean, it felt wrong that I was like enjoying the comforts of AC and like,
No, because you busted your ass to get down there.
Yeah.
I was just laying in the waiting for you to come get me.
Yeah.
I was like, I remember I got to a point where I was like, okay, I have cell phone service here. The view's pretty good. I'm in a legit campsite. So if he doesn't come tonight, at least I'm like camped in a campsite,
yeah,
right? Like,
you weren't gonna die. You
No,
were
I knew I was fine, but like I was
just wanted to
still-
come get you.
No, I was in a spot where I was super thirsty, you
Yeah.
know? I was really hungry and like I was really tired, you know? I wouldn't
know.
have died that night, but I was really, really, really excited when you showed up with all that stuff.
That's what we're talking about. It's like I wouldn't have died, but
It was pretty nice.
I was kind of hungry and thirsty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew that, and that's exactly the knowledge that I had, which is like what was charging me forward to,
Yeah, and I was tired enough to where I lied. I didn't even set up the hammock. Actually, I got the over and under quilt and just kind of laid on the ground.
Yeah,
You know, I was really tired.
really tired.
Yeah.
So, what out of everything we talked about, what is the one thing that you took away? What is like the biggest thing?
Oh God, the biggest thing. You go first. I don't know. I have to think for a second.
I have to think for a second too.
Is that a question? Were we gonna go through like
Well-
questions from the?
I think we should skip that for now.
Yeah, I think we should just wrap it up.
Yeah.
It's really long.
What I learned from this is just that something that I've already believed but was reconfirmed to me is that we are way more capable than we realize. And I don't know what happened on this trip, but something clicked that hasn't clicked before. And I don't think that anything like crazy's happened, but I felt really good mentally, physically. I felt good, and so
It was the chumba.
maybe it was a chumba, but I felt it was just a really nice experience. Like that was the first trip I've ever taken where the weather was so good, and I just felt good. And when all those things came together, it was like a unicorn, came into existence. Like,
Oh, I love unicorns.
yeah. I mean, it's like you're searching for that perfect ride, right? I mean, aren't you? Aren't you always like every time you picture a ride, you're like,
Mhm.
you have this like fantastical idea of what it's going to be.
Right.
And this ride was kind of that for me. It was like it was hard. It was really hard, but I did it,
Mhm.
and every time I did, I was like, holy shit, I did it.
And also, there's amazing scenery around me. And
Yeah.
like, AKA great views, great wildlife, great fun.
Everything.
That's what it's about.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what did you take away?
Probably mental and planning.
Yeah.
I know that's less boring than yours, but like, just like I learned a lot of lessons about planning a route. Really.
Those are
you
important
know?
lessons. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
like a
make
big
sure,
deal.
Like the route that you pick actually exists.
Yeah.
And that it's rideable in the time frame that you've estimated it would take. And
This is not silly. I mean, this is information that like is important.
yeah.
Make sure the route actually is there.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like mentally I learned a lot too. Just about climbing, and kind of meditating while climbing, and then learning to take in your surroundings and just being in the moment. And I mean, if you just let joy just kind of take over and like nature do its thing, you know, that's really gets you from point A to point B in the end, you know,
Right.
like being in the moment.
Yeah.
And
Where are you going to focus? It's your choice what you focus on.
yeah. And I've heard, like, you know, listening to your podcasts and listening to other things, like I've heard like extremely long distance riders talk about chipping away at it, and like what's, you know, all I'm going to think about right now, like maybe if they're racing, is like what's the next destination, you know? And I found myself kind of doing that, like instead of thinking of the route as a whole, like thinking about you know, where are we going to get to next, you know, or just being in that spot, just being in that moment, you know. And no offense to you, but I think riding together, but also riding separate while you're riding together is like important, you know,
Yeah.
to feel like you're in the moment, you
Yeah.
know, because it's really hard to like get that feeling of where you're at and feel like in it, you know, when you're trying to take in your like other people in your surroundings versus like just chilling there with the buck, you know, staring at him, having a face off like we did a couple times, and like all of that, you know. But yeah, just the mental side of it. I mean, I think you're right about pushing yourself for sure. I mean, that was one of the hardest things / most fun things that I've ever done.
I was proud of you. I mean, I was proud of the route that you planned, and I was proud of the way you tackled it. I mean, I knew that at some point it started to become hard, but you never let that impact your desire and your enthusiasm to accomplish what you set out to do, you know?
Yeah, like keeping calm and just being like, you know what? I'm in this, but I can get out of this too, you know?
Yep.
Like I'm in kind of a sticky spot here. And if I just sleep on it or take some time and figure out an alternative route, or, you know, maybe ask for some help,
Or maybe just suck it up and do it.
just grind it out. All of the above.
Yeah, I
combination
mean,
of the
right.
above.
It doesn't matter. It's like there's an end point. You have to get there.
Yeah. I mean, we sound like assholes, but like, yeah, I mean, I feel like I definitely learned that for real. Not just like in theory, but like I had to fucking do it, you know? I felt like shit pushing my bike up that stupid ass mountain when I couldn't ride it with all my gear on, and my bike was like 50 pounds. Those rocks were so big, and it felt like I was never going to get my bike up that thing, you know?
Yeah.
And it was like,
I definitely felt that way.
oh God. And then when I got to the top, I was like, oh my God, I did that. And I looked back down and I was like, I just did that. How did I get my bike up that, you know?
Yeah, I do know. I did it, and I looked back and I had the exact same thought.
It feels good when you're done.
Yeah, it does feel good when you're done. That's kind of the point. We don't get opportunities enough to push ourselves to find out what we can really do.
Yeah, I spent the next day explaining to a lot of people why I did not make the rehearsal dinner.
Yeah.
And I knew that was coming, and I knew I was going to have to talk about it. And I basically was like, I'm just going to sum it up, you know? We bit off more than we could chew, but we chewed it anyway.
Preach. I think that's good. I think that's a good ending. We bit off more than we could chew, but we chewed it anyway.
And my jaw's kind of sore, but you know, we live.
Yeah. Well, cheers to us. An epic adventure in the books.
Yes. We asked for an adventure, and we surely got one.
We certainly did. And I'm looking forward to many, many more.
Wild and Wonderful West Virginia. Part 2 next year. Coming soon.
All right. Thank you for tuning in. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, give me some feedback and let me know if y'all like this kind of style of interview. And if you do, when Keri and I trips, maybe we'll do some more of them. So one thing we didn't get to in the episode, just because we were talking so much, was there were some questions that I got on Instagram that we were going to answer. It was like getting late and Keri wanted to go to bed, which was understandable. So I'm just going to field a couple of those, or a few of those real quick. So one is from Rex.Robertson. He says, tips for riding with your significant other. I am not a marriage counselor, so I don't really feel qualified to answer this question fully. But I will just say this, that I am on wife 2.0. And one thing that I really was very clear to me from my first marriage was how little we had in common. And so whenever I was looking to, date or, get married or settle down or whatever, I was very, very purposeful in, looking for somebody who is already passionate about the same things that I was. And there's a lot of people in this world that I think can get excited about things and show an interest in something that someone else is interested in, but it's much different than a real passion for, the outdoors or for cycling or living intentionally or whatever it is. So, for me, that was just something that I was very aware of and was seeking out. And so Keri and I, our first date, quote unquote, was a mountain bike ride where we, met up and we went on a ride and then we ate and just chatted. And then our second date was a camping trip and a bike ride. And our third date was more bike riding. And that's just what we did, and certainly we have not always gone on trips and everything has gone super smooth. I mean, everybody, gets stressed by, the environment or just getting tired or hungry or whatever it is. And that's just normal, So I think if you're going to be riding with somebody, anyone, you have to be a little bit more considerate and also maybe just trying to help them out if you can. One thing I think, and we talk about this on the episode, that Keri and I tend to do well is support each other when, one of us is having a bad day or a bad moment or whatever. The other person just tries to be uplifting and encouraging and not overbearing, just have the energy, have the enthusiasm, be in the moment and just try to bring focus back to why you're there and you can do this and just whatever it is, positivity. And it's kind of been odd for us how we've been able to complement each other just naturally, because it seems like whenever I have a bad day, she's having a good one and vice versa. And maybe it would be nice if we just always had good days together. But at least we're able to support each other when we're having a bad day. So advice for getting out there with your significant other. My first advice is just pick the right type of person. If you're trying to find if you're trying to change somebody and introduce them to something that is outside their comfort zone, you have an uphill battle, and it may or may not be successful. And I don't think you should pressure that person to like the same things you like, right? So just my own personal philosophy, we should each be our own person and allow that other person to be themselves, and you should grow together, but with the ability to still be yourself and to navigate this world in your own way and on your own path. And that's challenging to do, but it makes no sense to me that Keri and I met when I was 34 or 35. So it's just silly to think that, I met her at, later in life, and, I had evolved and gone through so much, and then, she met me, and then that moment is frozen in time, and that neither one of us will ever progress. We will never change. We'll all just stay right there. That's not realistic. You know, we're all going to change and evolve. And so, I don't know how this is helpful, but I guess I try to take pressure off of a relationship by trying to control it, and try to allow myself and my wife to navigate our lives in the best way possible. And then we have things that we are very that we have in common that are like core, um, uh, like raising our family and managing our finances and bigger term goals about our future and raising kids and that kind of stuff. So anyway, all right, well, that's my relationship 101. Let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, I talk too much. I'm not going to be able to answer all of these. I'm going to do another one from Miles, Miles Arbor. All right, so Miles wanted to know what we were doing for food, cooking, etc. And that's an easy one. Like this route was perfectly planned to where we had food stops, at appropriate intervals. So we packed very, very little food. I mean, just some like goos and, some bars. And then when we were in a town, I grabbed like a Snickers bar or something like that, just to snack with along the way. So I don't mind routes like that, especially this one because it was so remote and 95% or more of the time you're not seeing anybody and you're just out in it, and then you like pop out and there's a restaurant and you eat and then you get back on and you keep going. So yeah, I mean, like this one just worked out pretty well. But in general, I've told Keri this, like I feel like my bike packing setup and like my whole kit is really well dialed in. I mean, it's very easy for me to pack. I know exactly, what I have and what I need for whatever trip I'm going on. Usually, I don't get it right 100% of the time, but I mean, I have a pretty good idea what I'm doing there. Where I'm really lacking and would like to improve is on cooking and eating better while on bike packing trips. And I'm not talking about, for me, like ultra endurance athlete type stuff. I'm talking about bike touring, like actually making coffee in the morning and getting into camp and, making some dinner or whatever it is. Like, so if you have ideas for that, please maybe head over. Actually, this is a good chance for me to plug our new subreddit. So my buddy Ryan is running that, and we just launched it, and we have a nice little group of members there. But if you're on Reddit, or even if you're not on Reddit and you want to just be a part of an online community where we can talk about the guest or the shows, or like one thread I posted up there was ideas for cooking while you're bike packing. So I'd love if you do have some ideas to hop on that thread and throw them out there and we can talk about them, because I'm severely lacking in that. I'd love to dig into the knowledge bank that I'm sure we have listening. But anyway, yeah. So if you're into like, if you want to talk about anything about the show or just bike packing, that subreddit, I want to be a really great resource and kind of a neat community hangout on the interwebs. And I will say that that group is going to be very inclusive of anybody and everybody. If anybody is being like an asshole or not being cool, they're just going to get kicked out. Like I don't have time for or any interest in internet drama. It's stupid. So come to the page. I don't care if you've never ridden a bike before. Hop on, ask questions, and if anybody is not cool to you, then I'll kick them out, or Ryan will kick them out. But they're gonna get the boot. So anyway, but yeah, hopefully we don't have much of that. I mean, honestly, like all the people I've met that are into this kind of stuff are really awesome humans. And anyway, I'm sure that's not going to be an issue, but I just want more than anything for people that are interested in this sport to feel comfortable, because I mean, myself, I've only been bike packing for 3 or 4 years. So it's not like I'm this super expert. This is a place where, yeah, anyone can do it. All right. So you've stuck around this long and you want to know, how can you support the Bikes or Death podcast? And I'm glad you asked. Firstly, I've made it really easy for you to support the show. If you just go to bikesordeath.com, there is a list basically of all the ways. So there's an Amazon affiliate link that you can use every time you go shopping. It doesn't cost you anything. And that's like the easiest way to support the show, because you're going to shop on Amazon anyway, right? Also, we've been dropping hot merch over on the store, so go check it out. I got the new Ride Your Damn Bike stickers. You knew it was coming. So those are now in stock and shipping out. So go check those out. I'm going to be doing some shirts and some other cool stuff too. And then I also set up a PayPal one-time donation button, which people have been taking advantage of. So if like there's an episode that you like, or whatever, you're just feeling like maybe you won the lottery and you just want to kick a few dollars my way, whatever it is, that's an easy way to throw some money my way. And last but not least, you can find me over on Patreon. I am very, very grateful to all my patrons, whether it's $1 or 10, or I even have someone that does $20 a month. Thank you, David. Yeah, I mean, that's super solid to me. And I don't, I'm just very grateful for everybody who does support the show, and especially my patrons, because I know I can like count on, that's like money I can see and say, okay, I have this much money coming, and I can use that to do X, Y, or Z, and I can kind of budget on that. So in that vein, like I recently hit 100. Actually, I hit 101 patrons, and then moments after, like I posted like a thank you, like, hey, I hit 100. Thank you to all my patrons. And then it quickly went down to 95. So I don't know if people was like, oh, he has 100. He doesn't need any more. I'm out of here, or what? I don't know. Whatever. It's all good. I know. If you can help, you can help, and if you can't, you can't. I get that, and I appreciate everyone for anything that you can do. So I'm not trying to call anyone out. I just kind of thought it was funny. So I did hit 100, and then it's like at 96 right now, I think. But I want to create more value for my patrons instead of just like swag, because now originally whenever I started it, the merchandise and the swag was only available to patrons, but now I'm selling that. So, I mean, it's not that cool anymore, I guess, or not that special. So I basically just put a poll on Patreon. I said, okay, what do you guys want? How can I give back to you? And the two things that really stood out was like kind of how-to videos, or like tips on bike packing, or, reviewing my equipment, like kind of talking about my bikes and that kind of stuff. And the other one is knowing which guests are coming ahead of time and getting a chance to potentially ask questions that I'll pose to those guests. So from now on, every patron is going to have access to that for as little as $1 a month. And I just uploaded my first like how-to style video. It's an 18-minute long video, super high quality. Let me tell you what, high production value. But it's 18 minutes of me basically packing my bike for the Bike Packing Summit. So, anyway, if that's something you're into, if there's other types of videos that you want me to make, become a patron and go on there and shoot me a message, and I'll try to make that happen. And like I said, the other thing is, I will let you know what guests are coming, and you can ask questions. So if there's something you really want to know, let me know and we'll make it happen. So, and the last thing that I'll mention real quick is I just got back from the Bike Packing Summit, and it was bananas. This was the first one that I've ever gone to, and I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I knew or thought it would be a good time, but any type of expectation I had was way surpassed. The level of information and inspiration that was delivered by the presenters and all the participants was world class. So grateful that I had a chance to go and do that. And while I was there, I got 7 interviews, and I'm not going to tell you what all of them are, but I will let you know what the next one is, and then every week I'll let you know the next coming one. So first up next week is going to be Miles Arbor. He is a editor for bikepacking.com, and he's the guy who reached out to me and wrote the article for Bikes or Death in bikepacking.com. So he's also like a really fun guy, and he opens the show in a very special, unique, and awesome way, and you're just gonna have to wait and see and hear all about it next week. But for now, the only thing you got to do is go ride your damn bike.